Hello everyone, it's Shannon here for Pink Fresh Studio. In today's video, we are going to take advantage of the awesome matching stencils for the Friendship Blooms set and create these really fun rainbow gradient flowers. Let's start off by taking a quick look at the Friendship Blooms stamp set. This is a gorgeous set, probably one of my most favorite from Pink Fresh. I love these beautiful flowers and the really awesome font for the sentiments. So I grabbed the largest flower and the medium one, and I'm first going to stamp them onto some white cardstock. I am heat embossing, so I did apply some anti-static powder first, and now I'm going to ink up my flowers in VersaMark ink and stamp them. Then I'll ink them up a second time and stamp them again just to make sure I got plenty of that ink down there and the embossing powder will really stick. I'm going to then pour on some white embossing powder, tap off the excess, and of course then heat set with my heat tool. This is going to be a little tricky to see right now. I can see it much better in person. I'll try to hold it so you can see the glare a little bit, but it is a lot easier to see in person. Now we're going to move on to the stencils. These are layering stencils, so there are several in this pack. There are actually 5. There are 3 layers or 3 stencils for the flowers. There's kind of a base, a detail, and then an even finer detail. And there's also 2 stencils for the leaves. Each stencil is marked. You can see at the top there it says stencil 5, so you can clearly tell which stencil is which, and more importantly, which is the front. Now typically with stencils you would use 3 colors for the layers, a light, medium, and dark. We're going to do something a little bit different though. We are going to create the different values just by controlling how heavy-handed or we ink blend and how many layers we apply of the ink. And that's going to create still the 3 different layers of color, or 3 different tones really, but this time we're going to do them in rainbow. And this is something fun that you could really only do with stencils. So I've laid down the first stencil for the largest bloom here, and I'm going to start by ink blending with my lightest shade, which is going to be this lemon whip. I just find it's nicer to start with that first, your lightest shade. Now moving on to my blue, this is Ocean Breeze, and then I'll finish with Sparkling Rose. These are basically your primary colors here, and so when they overlap each other a little bit, you're going to get kind of an orange, a green, and a purple. So that's really awesome. So you really get the full rainbow with those 3 colors. So I ink blended that first stencil very lightly. Tried to do it pretty light. Now I'm going to move on to stencil 2, and this is now we're moving into one of the detail layers for this flower. Again, I'm ink blending with my same 3 inks, but this time I'm going to be a little bit more heavy-handed with my pressure, but also I'm layering this ink on top of that first layer that we ink blended before, so it's definitely going to be darker than the layer that I first ink blended. And again, I'm working my way through my 3 colors and ink blending them basically or pretty much exactly where I ink blended them before, but they're just now a little bit more intense. Now moving on to my 3rd and final stencil for this flower, so the last detail layer. Once I get it lined up, I'll then repeat the process again. This time I'm being really heavy-handed, really trying to get that ink as dark as I possibly can to, again, get all that contrast so you can see the different layers here. And also ink blending kind of the pink where the pink is, the blue where the blue is, and the yellow where the yellow is. Just kind of keeping it very consistent. After I've finished that, I'll remove it and I'll hold it to the camera and you can hopefully see all those 3 layers. It has lots of depth, that beautiful white outline from our embossing, just so fun and pretty. So I went ahead and repeated that process for my little bloom, exactly the same. There's 3 layers as well, and I did the kind of lighter, medium, and dark or heaviest pressure for that to also build up that contrast. And I'll hold these 2 flowers up to the camera so hopefully you can see. They are just so pretty. Of course, you could do this technique with like 3 kind of really complementary colors like a pink, a orange, and a yellow. That would be really pretty as well. But I think the rainbow is so fun and kind of unexpected and just something different. So now I'm going to move on to my leaves. I'm just going to stamp them in VersaMark ink and heat emboss them in white embossing powder. I did, of course, apply some anti-static powder, stamp them in VersaMark, and now I'm going to dip them into that white embossing powder. These are going to be really subtle. Everything else is going to be pretty subtle on this card, and keeping those kind of maybe a little bit crazy rainbow flowers the focus. So I went ahead and die cut those out with the matching dies. And now we're going to move on to our background. I have this awesome Radiating Background die. This is the 2nd die. I love it. But we're going to do some dry embossing. And so for my Spellbinders Platinum, I like to start with a shim, so it's just a paper shim. Then I have my die and my A2 panel of white cardstock. Then my rubber mat. This comes with your die cutting machine. Then the embossing plate on top. Then I'll just run that through my die cutting machine, and then I'll have this beautiful embossed or debossed rather panel that's going to be really, again, nice and subtle and perfect for the background. Now we're going to move on to my sentiment. I already went ahead and stamped and widened, heat embossed a sentiment from the Friendship Blooms stamp set onto some gray cardstock. I'm going to cut this out. So I'm going to start by cutting with a ruler and X-Acto knife the top part, because the top part of the sentiment's nice and straight and linear. The rest of it I'm going to fussy cut out to get kind of to create that little border around it. You can really only do this part by fussy cutting when you have kind of all those loops and things from the letters. And I'll hold it to camera here, you can see it's all finished, and that's going to look really pretty, I think, with the rest of the card. So I went ahead and trimmed this panel that I debossed down a little bit, just about like 1/8 of an inch on all sides, so it'll have a nice little border. Now I'm going to add some liquid glue and adhere it onto the front of an A2 top folding white card base. Once that glue is set up a little bit, I'll remove that plate that I used to kind of hold it down while it dried, and now I'm ready to kind of arrange all my flowers and my leaves and create kind of a pleasing arrangement with these images. Now that I've got that arranged, I kind of knew where my sentiment was going to go already, so I've already added 1 layer of cardstock and then a half of another layer on the other end, because that end kind of hangs off of the flower, so I added another layer to kind of compensate for that thickness of the cardstock on that flower. Now that I got everything in the right place, I'm going to pick it up here with a piece of press and seal. This is a really handy crafting tool. And then flip it over, and now I can start adding some foam tape. I'm going to make sure I add foam tape to the leaves and that will kind of connect the leaves to the flowers to hold them in place, because I really don't want to have to show any foam tape on the leaves. So I'm making sure where the leaf and the flower overlap, I get that secured with some foam tape, because those leaves again are vellum, and anything I try to use to stick it down is going to show up. So I went ahead and removed the backing and then just stuck this down, and my card is complete. And I'll hold up to the camera so we can get a good look at the flowers and the leaves and that nice kind of debossed and subtle background. I really love how this card turned out. I think it is really fun and kind of unexpected to create these gradient rainbow flowers, and I think it's just such a fun and a cheerful card. I hope you guys enjoyed today's card and video. If you have any questions about the products I used, please check out the links below in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.